If you're ever thinking of moving, maybe to another state, well, there are different levels of stress for each state. Now, I've been to 10, lived in 10 states, been to most of them. I haven't been to Hawaii, I haven't been to Maine, I haven't been to some of the Vermonts and stuff like that. But I've been to most of them. And I've kind of put together a list of the 10 states that I have actually lived in 6 months or more with a stress level. And I'm going to talk about each state, what I think's wrong with it, what I liked and what I didn't like about it. So let's get going. We're going to start with number one, Ohio. Now these are in no order. I just looked at a map because, you got to look at a map. Oh yeah, I live there. Write it down. I live there. Write it down. That's what I did. Number one is Ohio. Now I give Ohio a stress level, and this is from 1 to 10. I give it a stress level of 5. Now what the stress level includes is the traffic bad? Are the people a-holes? What's the what's the cities like? Is there a lot of crime? The social, what's the social part of it? Those are what we're going to include in the stress level, because all those things combined can lead to stress. And I'm just going to I'm going to try to give you the years that I lived in these places, and some of them I'm not going to probably remember altogether, but I'll just give you a total of time total without the years that I lived there. And if it has anything to do with the state has changed now, I'll try to give you the years. But Ohio, probably off and on 10 years. And the reason I give Ohio a stress level of 5, because, the years I was there just wasn't terrible. I kind of lived, I didn't really live in the city. I lived in the suburbs or out rural. So things were kind of slow. From what I found is my life there it was okay. Winters suck up there, especially if you're by the Great Lakes. But overall, Ohio wasn't a bad place. Now, the last time I was in Ohio would have been 2010, I believe. I went to my grandmother was in the hospital, and when she was still alive, and I went up there with my brother. That's the last time I've been there, so it's been 15 years since I've stepped foot in Ohio. I don't know what it's like now. I know a lot of places have changed for the worse. Some have gotten better. So Ohio, it's not terrible. We'll put it to you that way. Number 2, Oklahoma. I grew up in Oklahoma. I've got a lot of years in Oklahoma. The last year I actually lived there was 2012, right before I came here. I went to Florida for a short time and then came from Florida to here. Oklahoma, I gave a stress level of 4. Now, that could depend. Are you living in Tulsa? I lived in a small town called Stigler. Stress level was pretty low, laid back town. Tulsa at the time wasn't terrible, but the crime was starting to really go up. And so I would give Tulsa, 4 to 6, somewhere in there. Crime is getting much worse in Tulsa. There's a lot of murders there. You wouldn't think so. Wasn't when I was a kid. But it's changed, And again, the population's growing, and whenever the population grows, you get the crime. That just comes with it. And so, yeah, I give that about a 4. That's when I lived there. Today, it's probably a 6. Next one, Texas. Now, Texas is a huge state. I lived in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Actually, I lived in Fort Worth. And it had there could be some stressful things going on in Texas. So I gave it a 6. And I would still say that today it's probably a 6. If you live in Dallas, it's probably a 50 out of 1 through 10. I always avoided Dallas with like the plague because, the traffic there, it just ain't my kind of place. But Fort Worth was not bad. Again, I lived rural outside of Fort Worth, so that helped me deal with it. I wasn't there too long. I think I was there a year. And then I moved on to one of the states that's coming up here next. So, I mean, Texas, not a bad place, but now, last time I was in Texas would have been, I'm trying to remember. It was a long time ago, 98. 1998 would have been the last time I was in Texas. So I would imagine it's quite a bit different, maybe closer to a 7 or 8 now. Next state, Kentucky. I spent 3 years living in Kentucky. I lived very rural, back in the holler. Let me tell you, if you ever seen a definition of a holler, it was where I lived in Kentucky. Now, if you don't know what a holler is, it's between two hills or mountains, and it dead ends usually. And I had that, and it was deep. In Kentucky, I gave a 3. Very laid back life in Kentucky. Now, this was 20 miles north of Lexington. I lived in a place called Sadieville, way back off the interstate. This is how the roads were like this, kind of like where I'm living now. Well, Kentucky was pretty cool. Very little stress there. I would say today maybe it went up to a 4, but I can't see it changing a whole lot. There's just, at least the little town I lived in, that's never going to blow up because of the hills and all that. It's never going to blow up with a huge population, but you don't ever know. So Kentucky, very low stress, be a good place for anybody to move. Next on the list, Florida. Yeah, man, I did 2 times in Florida. Yep. One time I was there a year and a half. The next time only a couple of months. And I made an attempt to go there in the early 90s, and that failed. Texas, or Florida right off the bat, was a 9. South Florida is where I was at, so it's like a little miniature New York City. There's probably as many New Yorkers there as there is in New York City. But man, the stress, people honking, people everywhere, and I was there. I've been there during the tourist season and the non-tourist season. I didn't see much difference, but you really see an increase in traffic during the winter. And it's just a very, very stressful place, a very expensive place. Maybe not compared to, say, California, but it's, you better have some money if you want to live there full time. And the stress level, anywhere you go, you're fighting people honking at you. They're driving in and out, cutting you off. It's a crazy place. Northern Florida is a far different scenario. A lot less stress up there. It seems once you get past Palm Beach, well, a while past Palm Beach, I'd say past Stuart, Florida, along the coast. Anywhere north of Stuart, Florida, you're probably good till you hit another city, because that whole coast is nothing but a city. So Florida, yeah, a level of 9, and now probably a 10, because it's never going to change in population. That is probably the most perfect climate you could live in the United States. I mean, it's just beautiful there, but that comes with the price. Next one up, Utah. Now, I give Utah a 7. Is that right? A 7. Okay, why did I give Utah a 7? I don't know. It was a weird place. Okay, I was in St. George. I was only there about a year. And everybody's Mormon. I wasn't Mormon. Not that I don't think, nobody called me out on that. But it was just a different place. I don't know. It just never felt like it was home to me. And I always felt stressed there. Beautiful place. I mean, I would have a little... St. George is all grown up now. I was there in 93 and 90... Yeah, it would have been 93. March of 93, I think, is when I got there. Then I got a job in Vegas. That's coming up next. I don't know, man. But there was a lot of people moving in at that time. And when you get a town or an area that has all these transplants, it can make for a stressful situation. And it wasn't cheap. And it's extremely expensive now, so it's probably more like a 10. So if you're ever thinking of going, and there are places in Utah that would have less stress, but it's pretty sparsely populated state. But it is one of our most beautiful states, and I did enjoy that part of it. Nevada, I don't know which number I'm on. There's 10 states, okay? Nevada, of course, I lived in Vegas, and I didn't live in no suburb of Vegas. I lived in Vegas. Stress level was always a constant 10. It's just the atmosphere, and I gambled, so that made it worse. The work, the job at the Las Vegas Review-Journal, they didn't pay that much. Wasn't a union shop. I'd worked in union shops that paid twice that amount. This was early on in my printing career, so you get on the big presses, and then you can move up to making the more money. But anywhere you went in Vegas, and this was in 94, 95, in there, 2 hours to go get a loaf of bread. Traffic was so bad. It is 10 times worse now. I think back when I was there, probably 500,000 people, if that. Now, there's well over 1 million people in the Las Vegas metro. Crime, the homeless, all of that is crazy now. And Vegas is actually suffering a little bit from what I've been seeing a lot of videos where the casinos, and it's their own fault, charging all these fees that they charge. Used to be you could go to a casino, I don't even know if you can drink for free there anymore if you're gambling. Probably not. But you could drink for free. They'd even give you cigarettes. You can get a buffet for under $5. We used to go to the Sands, and it was at the top. And you go up there, man, it was like less than $10 a person. Eat all you want. You had lobster. You had everything. They cut all that out. Now you're paying $6, $10 for a can of beer or a bottle of beer. So they deserve what they're getting. So Nevada, still a 10. If it could go higher, it would probably be that. So Minnesota. Now, the stress. I lived in the west part of a town called Worthington, right by Sioux Falls. I also lived in the Twin Cities. And I would give them about the same kind of a rating, a stress level, which would be a 7. Because there wasn't nothing to do in the rural places. And you had to deal with that, God forbid, weather in the winter, which was like most of the year. I mean, it didn't start getting warm until May. And then by the end of September, it was starting to get cold again. And I've made a video about Minnesota. But I wouldn't say I was super stressed. Now, living in the St. Paul area, it was a little more stress there. But it really wasn't terrible like Vegas or anything like that. So I would probably still, keep it at a 7. But the political arena there, that shoots it up to 10 because they do some crazy political things there, if you know what I mean. It's all been all over the news. Number 9, Iowa. Iowa gets the lowest rating of 2, and they're still at a 2, I would say today. It's just Iowa, man. It's all farm fields, and even in Des Moines, as I worked for the Des Moines Register, I lived rural. I mean, Des Moines is surrounded by rural towns and rural farmlands, and you could live rural and work in the city, and that's what I did. But the traffic, there were some areas of Des Moines that had some really, really bad traffic. But for the most part, you didn't have any trouble getting anywhere. It was kind of boring. If you were in the nightlife and things like that, there wasn't any. So, it just depends on what you like. If you don't like country living or farming or any of that, you're not going to like Iowa. And I think they like that. The Iowa people are, I don't know, what you discover in Iowa is people that have been there for generations. And they have in Minnesota too. But I think more so in Iowa. And the people live forever. You just open the obituaries of the paper. They're all in their 90s and 100s. And Nobody dies young. Must be that corn, I guess. I don't know what it is. So Iowa was a 2 then. When was my last time in Iowa? 2000. I've been through it since, but I lived there the last in 2000. I even took flying lessons, got a pilot's license at Charles City, Iowa. I've had videos on that as well. But Iowa, pretty good place, pretty dang good place to live if you're looking for a quiet life with no stress. And we got one left. This state has changed more than any of them in the last probably 30 years, and that's Colorado. I worked for the Denver Post. I lived there 4 years, I think. And I moved there 1997, somewhere in there, 96 or 97. And people were starting to just come from California left and right. It hadn't gotten bad yet with transplants, but there were people moving there from all over. I mean, I was one of them. Came there to work. And it was booming. Now, I see these homeless people set up camps on these roads, on these streets downtown. I live downtown. I lived in a high-rise. And I see them camped out on the streets that I would walk home at 2 or 3 in the morning. Living in the high-rise, me and my friend didn't have a vehicle because they wanted $250 a month to park it in the garage. And the bus system is so good in Denver, you could walk right outside of the apartment building, and there's the bus stop. They even had a store and a liquor store in the apartment building. You could get up in your shorts and go down there and get you a bottle of hooch, get you a micro dog. Never have to leave your apartment building. Just get on the elevator and go back up. No, I lived on the first floor. Yeah, live in a high-rise on the first floor. That was the joke of the paper. But Denver was, what'd I give it? I gave it an 8. It's probably a 76 now. Because everything I'm seeing on the news with their politics and the crime, it has went insane. And there's a housing shortage. I would never, ever want to go back to Denver. You couldn't pay me. And I actually looked. The apartment that I was renting was $900 a month in the late 90s. That same apartment is like $2,700 a month right now. I even looked at the actual apartment I lived in. They have it online. 23 to $2,800 a month. That is crazy. Couldn't see doing it. But it was convenient living downtown Denver, but I don't think I'd want to walk around there now. Nope. Well, I guess that's all I got. So if you are interested in one of these 10 states that's all rolled up here on this paper, right here, that I have. Well, that's addresses to some meat markets. So I'm going to go buy some meat and fill up my freezer because I haven't even plugged in my new freezer yet. But if you lived in you want to live in one of these 10 states, well, that's my opinion. And that's what it is, just my opinion. If you live in one of them states and you didn't like my review of your state, well, that's my review. Sticking to it. Happy trails.